think the first difference that I noticed in the Czech Republic was the bathrooms, because I'd go to the bathroom. I got off the plane, I went into the bathroom, so I was like, whoa, it's different. Not that like they have different facilities, but it just looks different. Looks European. The Czech Republic's a very safe place. I was never seriously physically assaulted. There are a few minor occasions, but we won't talk about them. To have a good time in the Czech Republic, enjoy the culture, eat the food, just embrace it all. The cities in the Czech Republic have no order to them at all. They're just kind of built in one, they started building in one spot and they kind of like sprawl out over everywhere. So that's kind of difficult if you don't have a map. There's two kinds of houses or places of residence that they'd live in. There's one called domečky, and that's more of a house like what we think of now. Sometimes they'd be 2 to 3 stories high and kind of split down the middle, and one family would live on one side and the other on the other. A lot of families would stay in that house, and their kids and their kids' kids would live there. And probably the more common one that I dealt with was, they're called paneláks, and they're basically big apartment buildings made out of concrete, where a family would have quite a small living space, but they're very efficient in the fact that you can have thousands of people in a small area. Those were probably the most common, the paneláks. And originally in communism, when they made them, they were just concrete, so they're kind of ugly gray. But now, after communism, people kind of got sick of that, so they'll put up foam on them and they'll paint them pretty colors. So they're multicolored, large apartment buildings. The Czechs love nature. It's beautiful nature there. I was mostly, if not always, in the city. But if I was riding a train to another city, you'd go through the country, beautiful rolling hills, a lot of forests. A lot of it has been cultivated, so you'll have these beautiful fields of these yellow flowers, or that they're using to make some sort of oil. One thing that they do in the forest, they like to go collect mushrooms, and I mean huge mushrooms, and they'll go cook them after that. But there's a great tradition of them going into the forest and as a family at the right season, and just collect thousands of mushrooms. Well, normal food in the Czech Republic is meat and potatoes. They eat a lot of breads. They have these rolls, they're called rolíks. They cost less than a cent, or maybe like 5 cents, if I'm calculating it correctly. But you'll eat those a lot. And you'll just put like a little piece of meat or cheese on it, and you'll eat it like that. So it's very simple foods. Or they'll be kind of like a chicken schnitzel with potatoes. As far as one of my favorite dishes, it's called svíčková. It is dumplings, and there's a vegetable sauce and a piece of pork in the vegetable sauce. And then on top of the pork there is a slice of lemon, cranberry sauce, and whipped cream. And the idea is to soak up all the gravy with the dumplings and kind of eat it with the meat a little bit. It's very delicious. It's hard to explain. That was one of them. Another one that's actually from Slovakia is called halušky. And I would describe it as mac and cheese, kind of. But instead of being wheat noodles, they're potato noodles. And instead of normal cheese, like cheddar cheese, it's a goat cheese. And then you usually put bacon in it or something. And it's a very filling, thick meal that's delicious. I actually want to eat it now that I'm thinking about it. I didn't eat a lot of desserts, but one that I'd eat was fruit dumplings. And they'd take like an apricot, a plum, a peach, or a piece of a peach, and they'd cover it in dough. They'd boil it, and then you'd have 3 or 4 of those on your plate. They'd put butter over it and maybe some kind of cheese. It's not like cheese as we think of it, but it's kind of like a cottage cheese, and then powdered sugar on top of that. And that's what you eat, and it's delicious. And they eat it as a meal. So it's not just like a dessert, but it's a sweet meal. So I am thinking of a good dessert right now. It's called marlenka. And it's a cake. I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of like graham crackerish, chocolatey. I can't even explain it right, but it's delicious. Marlenka. Anything that you want to get there, you can get there as far as food. It's very westernized in that sense, so you don't have to worry about like not being able to get cold cereal or something like that, or having to adjust to really weird foods all the time. In a grocery store, they have everything that you would have here in a grocery store. So the Czech people are very hardworking and very resourceful. It's not a weird sight to see in maybe the front yard or backyard of someone's home, them having a huge pile of bricks that they're just saving from an older construction project for a new one. They save a lot of things. When they work hard. It's not rare to see them out in their backyard cutting down a tree with their family, or working in the garden. They're very do-it-yourself, or do-it-yourself with the help of your family. And I liked that aspect of it, that they were so resourceful, so willing to save, to live with less, and be content with that. And the second characteristic of Czech people that I really like is their focus on families, and how much they love their families and they stay together. They live in the same house with their family and their grandparents for a long time. When a family is strong, they stay strong together and they visit home often. Public transportation is huge in the Czech Republic. You don't really need a car. You can get anywhere you want to, even into other cities. If it's not by bus, it's by a trolley bus, which is a bus with just 2 little antennae that go up and they catch power lines. If it's not by trolley bus, it's by tram, which is kind of like tracks here in Salt Lake, or basically a small train. If it's not by tram, Prague has a metro. And if you're going a long ways, you can take buses or trains. And that was a really cool thing, that you can get anywhere basically without a car. The Czech Republic as an independent state has not existed for more than 100 years. They've been parts of other kingdoms or other empires. Like in 1910 to 1936, roughly, they had the Czech Republic. The Czechoslovakia was a free state, but then the fascists from Germany came in. They took over, and then after World War II, there's about 3 years that they were an independent state, and then the communists came. And it wasn't until about when I was born in 1991 that they became a free state again. So I feel like that has played a very big role in the way that the Czech people think, how they're sometimes afraid of organizations and people who promise them things, because they have been let down so many times before. The education system in the Czech Republic is different from here in the United States. They go to school. They go to a elementary school, and they learn similar things like we'd learn, like arithmetic, history, Czech, like we'd learn English, and so on and so forth. But when it gets up into like middle school, high school, it gets a little bit different, because already in their equivalent to our high school, they have chosen a career, or they have chosen to go to a more kind of a general education school where they would then be able to go to college after that. So there's a lot of pressure on them at a younger age to know what they need to do. And I had some conversations with some younger kids over there, and it'd be really funny. They're like, so what are you going to do? And I'm like, I have no idea. And they're like, you don't? And I explained to them the school system's different here. And I think that comes from the school system being socialized there, that they go to school for free. And even into university, they'll have a certain amount of time that is free, that they can get their education. So the government wants to get them through as fast as possible. Czech is a Slavic language, which means it's similar to Russian, to Ukrainian, to those sort of languages. And it's a difficult language. It's hard to learn. Luckily, it's not a different alphabet. It's the same Roman alphabet, just with a few, maybe 3 different letters. But it's easy to understand that way. Prague is a beautiful city. Very old. Prague Castle has a huge cathedral in it. Very beautiful, very old. Beautiful stained glass windows there. Being in Prague is like kind of living a fairy tale a little bit, because every once in a while you'd realize, wow, I'm in Prague right now. This bridge that I'm walking on was built in the 1300s. And I mean, there's just all sorts of old buildings, old architecture. I mean, the whole of Prague is just a big tourist attraction. There's so much there to see. On the main town square, a famous attraction is it's the astronomical clock. I didn't know how to read it, but every hour it chimes, and then the 12 apostles will come out, like figurines that represent the 12 apostles. They'll kind of come out and circle around as it's chiming. Some cool things that I saw when I was there my last week with my family were some of the museums about communism or honoring the army. There's this one museum I went to in Prague, and it was just about, I guess inside was about the political history of the Czech Republic. But it was a really cool building in the fact that it kind of looked like a place where the Communist Party would go to have a big, not a convention, like a big rally where they'd go. Like there are these big, it was a really big room, maybe 100 feet tall, huge room. There was a big statue of this flying kind of angel lady in it. There are these huge tapestries, these red tapestries, like where they'd go and kind of have a political meeting for the communists. During Easter, they make these big long whips, and the men do, and they go around whipping the girls. You whip them to give them good health, apparently, and they give you candy. So that's what happens. That was an interesting tradition. As far as how they celebrate holidays, Christmas is very similar. They eat carp for Christmas, which isn't a very good fish. It has a lot of bones in it. There's a lot of festivals there. I mean, as far as the people go, they like to have a good time. They like to come together as a group and celebrate, be it Easter or Christmas or other holidays associated with those. They'll come on the main town square. They'll have a lot of booths set up and music playing. They drink a lot of beer there and food, and sell their goods or their artwork or whatever. So they celebrate a lot in that fashion, coming together in a festival.